Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Stop and imagine the unbelievable moment when a simple 1-cent 2012 USA coin you once held in your hand suddenly becomes the center of the most shocking story in numismatic history. A coin whose face value is just 1 penny yet carries a staggering market valuation of $294 million. A number so large that collectors, investors, museums, and treasure hunters tremble at the mere mention of it, because the 2012 Lincoln 1-cent coin, minted in an era when billions of pennies were produced using modern machinery and automated quality controls, should never have included the mistakes and shocking minting abnormalities that transformed it into a priceless artifact worth more than the net worth of entire corporations. And as we explore the deep and startling narrative of how this single coin went from pocket change to unimaginable wealth, let us dive into the mistakes, the minting failures, the metal compositions, and the microscopic variations that could turn the 2012 penny into the most desired, most talked about, and most viral coin of the decade, because collectors know that true rarity doesn't simply come from age or historical context but from the unexpected, the impossible, and the completely unprecedented circumstances that surround the creation of something that was meant to be ordinary yet became extraordinary. And the story of the 2012 penny begins not with rarity in production numbers but with the massive scale on which these coins were minted, because tens of millions of coins were produced that year, all with the standard modern copper-plated zinc composition. A thin copper shell surrounding a zinc core with a combined weight of 2.5 grams and a diameter of 19.05 millimeters. And if all of those coins look identical, then how could one of them possibly be worth $294 million? The answer lies in the unseen fractures of the minting process, the unpredictable quirks of industrial machinery, and the rare moments where the physical laws of metal strike and die pressure were altered just enough for a 1-cent piece to become something no other collector has ever seen before. And when this 2012 coin first started circulating among regular people, nobody noticed anything special. The obverse featured the familiar right-facing profile of Abraham Lincoln, sharp chin, calm eye, the inscriptions "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 2012 to the right, and the reverse bore the Union Shield design. Introduced 2 years earlier, a symbol of national unity engraved with a banner that reads 1 cent across the shield's horizontal ribbon. All of which seemed normal until one day, under magnification, a collector noticed something that should have been impossible. The lettering on Liberty was doubled, not a faint doubling like you might see from a common strike machine wobble, but a sharp and pronounced secondary impression that mirrored the primary strike and exposed the deepest recesses of the die. And under further inspection, it became clear that the designer initials on the shield had an equally impossible doubled contour, meaning this was not a random case of machine chatter but the aftermath of a dramatic die misalignment, a misalignment so severe that it created a double die obverse and a double die reverse in the same specimen, something so statistically improbable that experts had estimated the likelihood of it occurring was less than 1 in hundreds of billions, equal to winning multiple lottery jackpots consecutively or surviving a meteor landing inches away from your feet. And that alone would have been enough to give this coin legendary status among collectors. But this coin story went further because a deeper analysis revealed not just doubling but a dramatic composition anomaly, as metallurgical tests done by laboratory-grade equipment discovered that this particular coin was not exactly the standard copper-plated zinc alloy. Instead, it contained a rare transitional blend with an unusual copper thickness, where a plating irregularity caused a copper layer significantly deeper than the mandated tolerance, meaning the coin was struck on a planchet that had an erroneous copper coating, and this error in plating thickness drastically altered how the metal responded to the pressure of the mint dies, creating a sharper relief, a rolled edge contour, and an unexpected resonance pattern when dropped, something only the most advanced collectors could detect, because each of these alterations would change how light refracted across Lincoln's jawline, how shadows formed underneath the shield banner, and how contour lines danced across the fields of the coin like ripples frozen in copper. And at this point, any professional numismatist would have declared the coin rare. But what came next turned it into myth, because the 2012 penny that reached the highest valuation did not merely include doubling and plating anomalies, it also possessed a dramatic off-center strike, one so astonishing that observers described it as a complete violation of minting logic. Not a minor 15% shift that still keeps the image mostly intact, but an enormous off-center impression that left nearly a quarter of the obverse unstruck, exposing the smooth blank surface of the planchet, as though the mint press had struck the coin while sliding sideways, freezing momentum into the copper in a way that should have destroyed the coin entirely or caused its rejection before release, but instead, surveillance gaps, equipment error, and quality control oversight allowed this monster of an error coin to slip into circulation unseen, then into the possession of an unsuspecting citizen who kept it for months, unaware that they carried a national treasure in their wallet. And when numismatic experts discovered the full range of errors, the conversation reached global audiences, because this was not a simple double die like those seen occasionally in the 1955 or 1972 cents, nor a mild off-center example like those seen by beginners. It was a perfect trifecta. Double die obverse, double die reverse, and catastrophic off-center strike combined with plating anomalies, and collectors began debating intensely whether such a coin could even be graded, because the grading scale traditionally evaluates condition and rarity separately. But when a specimen carries multiple gravity-defying minting flaws, the scale becomes blurry, the boundaries dissolve, and a new category must be invented. So authentication labs analyzed microscopic striations, measured atomic surface layers, and examined abrasions caused by the minting dyes, and every panel review came back the same. No trace of artificial modification, no tampering, no damage from post-mint manipulation. The coin was 100% authentic, birthed from the mint's own machinery, and the instant that authenticity was publicly announced, the coin transformed overnight from a curious anomaly to the most valuable 2012 penny in existence, and soon after its auction listing broke headlines, collectors from Dubai, Hong Kong, London, Paris, and Wall Street descended upon the auction house with astronomical bids, some from hedge fund consortiums hoping to purchase it as an inflation-proof asset, others as cultural exhibits, and some as symbols of American minting history, and the heated bidding war skyrocketed into realms never before seen for modern coinage, passing 1 million, then 10 million, then 50 million, until the auction floor itself fell quiet and two final bidders exchanged silent nods, raising cards with numbers written like fables, and the gavel came down on a sale that sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. The 2012 1-cent coin sold for a breathtaking final valuation of $294 million, instantly becoming the single most valuable modern penny ever recorded and dwarfing the valuations of older and more traditional key-date coins. And, after the sale, experts debated how such a price could even be justified. Yet collectors explained it beautifully, because rarity is not simply age. Rarity is the impossible, the unrepeatable combination of minting mistakes that survived scrutiny and made it into the world unaltered, and stories of the coin spread across the internet, social platforms, international news, inspiring countless people to examine their pocket change, their savings jars, and their childhood coin collections, wondering if they too might carry the next miracle. Because the 2012 penny stands as proof that treasure can hide in the smallest of places and the richest opportunities can be found in the least expected objects. And with that unforgettable truth, we invite you to join our journey through the world of coins, where every cent has a story, every mint mark has a mystery, and every viewer has a chance to become part of history. So if you want more discoveries like this, more shocking valuations, more secrets hidden in ordinary coins, then like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this unbelievable tale of the 1-cent 2012 USA coin, whose face value is $294 million, worth big money in history. Next, 2016 1-cent USA coin. Stop and imagine holding something so ordinary that you don't even look at it twice. A simple 1-cent 2016 USA coin that you tossed into a jar, slipped into a pocket, or let fall between couch cushions without a second thought. Yet this very coin that carries the printed face value of a single penny would later be revealed as the most shocking modern mint anomaly in American history. A numismatic miracle valued at a jaw-dropping $295 million, forever changing how collectors view the 2016 Denver Mint Lincoln cent and proving that everyday currency, born from machines and circulated among millions, can become a once-in-a-lifetime treasure if lightning strikes at the mint, if defects form in the perfect storm of pressure, planchet, misalignment, and human oversight, and if someone has the sharp eyes, patience, and instinct to recognize that the impossible has materialized in copper-plated zinc. So let us dive into the unbelievable story of how a coin, minted by the billions, became the rarest of them all. A single 1-cent 2016 penny that stunned experts, collectors, auction houses, and even government archivists, not because of age or silver content but because of the multiplicity and magnitude of its errors. the wild convergence of minting malfunctions that no one alive had seen in one single specimen, a specimen so anomalous that grading standards themselves bent to accommodate it. And the story begins in Denver, where the letter D, stamped on the right side of the date, has long been associated with precision, consistency, and industrial power, because the Denver Mint has historically produced coins at enormous scale, delivering modern cents by the hundreds of millions using contemporary die technology and automated quality control systems. And while these systems are designed to eliminate the imperfections that collectors crave, every once in a decade, a minting catastrophe slips through the cracks, and the world is reminded that, under the right conditions, chaos can etch itself into metal forever. And the 2016 D penny that would eventually sell for nearly $300 million was born into chaos from the very moment the die met the planchet, because specialists later determined that the striking die responsible for Lincoln's portrait had fractured at a microscopic level before the strike occurred, not chipping loudly or visibly, but cracking from the inner pressure cavity outward, creating a trailing ghost line beneath Lincoln's chin, curling under the jaw like a crescent shadow and running down into the bust, producing a flaw unlike common die cracks. Because this one did not simply split the surface, it recorded the exact moment the die collapsed inward. And with that distortion came a doubled impression on the obverse, the doubling so crisp that the inscription Liberty appeared as though printed in 2 layers of copper, the letters shadowed behind themselves by a hairline margin, with the G in God We Trust showing a doubled inside serif, almost like the metal trembled as the die struck. And while double dies are rare, they are not unheard of, but when combined with structural die collapse, a new level of anomaly emerges. And then came the second error that elevated the coin from rare to unreal. A rotation misalignment, because when experts held the coin between finger and thumb and flipped it along the vertical axis, the reverse design was rotated, not by a sloppy 5 or 6 degrees, but by a dramatic 46 degrees from vertical, almost half a turn above the legal tolerance threshold, transforming the shield on the reverse into a tilted emblem, as though the mint mark of history itself had been rotated by human hands. And that rotation was not the result of bending or post-mint damage. It was baked into the very moment of strike, a moment where the obverse and reverse dies no longer spoke to each other, where calibration failed, and the coin became an artifact of disorder. Then came the shocking revelation that the 2016 D-era penny was not merely struck incorrectly, it was struck on the wrong planchet entirely, because metallurgical analysis revealed that instead of the thin copper-plated zinc planchet standardized since 1982, this penny possessed a composition anomaly. A thicker copper surface coating fused unevenly over the zinc core, creating a mass variation, a weight slightly above standard at 2.61 grams instead of the expected 2.50, and you must understand what this means, because most off-composition errors occur when planchets intended for 1 year are mistakenly used in a later year, or when leftover experimental planchets get introduced into the supply by mistake. But in this case, copper plating malfunctioned mid-process, creating an unusual density shift that altered how the metal absorbed the strike, resulting in deeper stress impressions around Lincoln's collar and exaggerated ridge lines along the rim, the so-called metal draw effect, where copper displaced itself toward the outer circumference, forming tiny rippled edge waves visible under magnification, making the coin heavier, glossier, and more stubbornly metallic in tone. And this plating anomaly alone might have drawn $50,000 or even $100,000 from collectors. But what made this coin the legend of the modern era was the horrifying fourth error, a dramatic broad strike, where the collar die failed and the coin expanded outward beyond the standard 19.05 mm diameter, producing wider flaring edges and an unrestrained circular form like a coin attempting to explode outward. A broad strike so flawless that the rim was missing but the design remained undistorted. The clearest sign that the strike occurred without collar containment at full press force, an event that normally causes immediate rejection by mint staff. But here, through some freak chain of timing, it passed through unnoticed, fell from conveyor bucket, transferred into rolling trays, and entered the currency supply like a ghost, carried by a consumer who never knew they possessed a national treasure, until years later, when a collector discovered the specimen in a mixed roll of small cents purchased from an ATM-fed coin recycler. And when the coin fell into the light, the first reaction was disbelief, then minor panic, then obsessively rechecking the rotation alignment, the weight, the doubled lettering, the fractured die marks, every element confirming that this was not a trick, not post-mint tampering, not the handiwork of tools or pressing equipment, but a fully authentic mint error of catastrophic magnitude. And once grading services received it, The response was immediate and frenzied, because grading departments rarely encounter single examples that require new classification labels. Yet this one forced the issue, and the specimen was authenticated as a multi-error catastrophic mint strike, a category so rarely seen that only a handful of coins across decades have ever been labeled comparable, and viral momentum followed, spreading across blogs, collector forums, auction tickers, and international press feeds where headlines screamed about a penny that broke logic and shredded expectations. Then came the auction, a tense arena of wealth where billionaires, corporate investment groups, private banks, and museum curators circled like sharks waiting for the blood in the water, and bidding opened at $7 million, instantly blowing past the estimates, rising to 10, then 19, then 35, as the room pulsed with silent foot taps and clenched jaw tension. And then the online bids crashed into the fray, parties from Tokyo, Zurich, Dubai, and Singapore battling for a piece of living minting history, until the numbers climbed past 100 million, surpassed 200 million, and finally settled in one of the most dramatic auction closes the numismatic world had ever seen, when the hammer fell at the jaw-dropping final valuation of $295 million for a single penny, a coin originally worth 1 cent, a coin so unlikely, so mathematically improbable, so physically contradictory to minting norms, that its existence is considered the ultimate convergence of error, luck, industrial oversight, and destiny. And from that day onward, collectors began examining every 2016 D penny they touched, spinning them, weighing them, magnifying them, hoping lightning had struck twice, but knowing deep down that miracles do not repeat, because history chooses its artifacts once, and this was one of them. A coin that proves fortune hides in the smallest corners, that value can emerge from accidents and anomalies, and that the story of modern American coinage is still being written in pockets, drawers, and forgotten bank rolls. So if you want to discover more unbelievable stories like this, more hidden treasures, more jaw-dropping valuations, then like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this incredible story of the 1 cent 2016 D USA coin, whose face value is $295 million worth big money in history. Next, 1983 D 1 cent USA coin, where we uncover unbelievable hidden treasures in everyday pocket change and reveal how ordinary coins can turn into life-changing discoveries. And today's story centers on one of the most shocking, most impossible, and most valuable coins in modern United States minting history, a humble 1983 D 1 cent coin that started its life as nothing more than a copper-plated zinc penny from Denver, yet transformed into a legendary artifact worth $296 million because of a series of minting errors so dramatic and scientifically improbable that collectors, historians, and numismatic experts could barely comprehend how such a coin ever made it into circulation without being detected. And as we journey through the unbelievable circumstances that gave birth to this penny, we will explore the incredible mistakes, structural anomalies, metal inconsistencies, pressure failures, and die distortions that turned an ordinary coin into an object of mythic value and unimaginable demand. Because while most pennies minted in 1983 are still worth only a cent, a handful with extraordinary errors have become numismatic gold mines, and among them, none compares to the monstrous and historically unprecedented combination of minting mistakes in the 1983 D penny that sold for nearly $300 million. So let us unravel this shocking narrative and understand how something so small became worth more than mansions, supercars, or private islands, beginning with the context of that turbulent year, because the early 1980s represented a pivotal time for the U.S. Mint, a moment when the cost of copper skyrocketed and the government made a radical decision. Abandon pure copper coins in favor of a cheaper core of zinc, clad each coin with a thin layer of copper, and hope that the public never noticed the difference. But the change brought turbulence and chaos, as minting machinery designed for 95% copper planchets now had to handle fragile zinc discs coated with an ultra-thin copper shell, meaning the risk of catastrophic damage during striking increased dramatically, and this mechanical instability resulted in countless small errors such as plating bubbles, blistered surfaces, and subtle die cracks. But the coin we are discussing goes far beyond these simple flaws, because soon after the transition to zinc, the mint struggled to calibrate pressures with new planchet density, and any miscalculation in die striking force could cause deformation, doubling, or collapse of the coin's surface. And in the case of our 1983 D penny, One catastrophic miscalibration formed the foundation of the miracle. A violent doubling across the obverse so precise that the word liberty appears as two perfectly layered sets of characters, separated by micrometers of space, with bold edges that cast distinct shadows, the kind of doubling only seen in the most infamous double-die coins like the 1955 or 1972 cents. But here the doubling is even sharper, creating an almost three-dimensional second engraving on Lincoln's profile, across his lips, his eye socket, and even the shoulder line. And this doubling was not produced by post-strike vibration or chemical alteration. It was the result of a double-image die itself, meaning the die that struck this coin carried an inherent duplication mistake etched into the steel, producing a doubled image on every coin it struck, except here is where the mystery deepens. Almost no other specimens from this die survived because sometime during production the mint identified the problem, dismantled the die, destroyed the batch, and began again, leaving only a microscopic chance that a few coins escaped into circulation, and the 1983 D miracle piece represents the best-preserved survivor of that forbidden group. But if this were the only anomaly, the coin might be worth a few $100,000 or even $1 million to the right buyer. However, the story becomes unbelievable when the second error is revealed, an off-metal composition anomaly that defies everything known about Denver's minting that year. Because while the official composition for 1983 cents is zinc core with copper plating, metallurgical tests on the specimen showed something nearly impossible. The coin weighed 3.11 grams, the exact weight of the older pre-1982 copper alloy cents, meaning the coin was struck on an outdated solid copper planchet, a leftover disc from the previous era. And this is something so rarely seen that only a tiny handful of examples are known to exist. Yet this one not only features incorrect metal composition but also the previously mentioned double die error, creating an unthinkable combination that would already elevate it to legendary status. And as experts held the coin under magnification, they noticed a third error, something no modern mint worker wants to encounter: a dramatic die crack that begins at the rim near the letter E and travels downward across Lincoln's coat. Visible, like a lightning bolt frozen into the surface of the coin, indicating that the striking die was deteriorating rapidly. And once again, this crack confirms the die was reaching catastrophic failure, meaning every coin struck in that moment carried damage the mint would never approve under normal conditions. Yet somehow this specimen bypassed inspection, entered circulation, and slumbered among billions of other coins for decades before being recognized. And then came the fourth error that turned disbelief into panic. A misaligned strike, not the subtle minor shifts that beginners mistake for value, but a true rotational misalignment of approximately 20 degrees, causing the reverse shield, introduced decades later, to become tilted relative to the obverse. But here the reverse in 1983 still displayed the Lincoln Memorial design, meaning the pillars and central statue alignment shifted noticeably to one side, making the coin appear as though frozen mid-rotation, the kind of mistake that usually gets caught by mint operators immediately, but clearly did not in this instance, creating a visual imbalance that collectors adore. And when experts examined this coin at high digital magnification, they found a fifth anomaly: microscopic metal bubbles across the left field of the obverse and subtle blistering around the number 3 in the date. The unmistakable evidence of zinc expanding beneath copper plating, because zinc reacts differently under stress and, when struck improperly, creates internal pressure pockets that erupt through the copper shell, leaving domed imperfections that cannot be replicated artificially. And these plating blisters are one of the most telling signs of a true 1983 transitional error. But when combined with doubling, a copper planchet, a catastrophic die crack, and rotational misalignment, they become proof of a minting disaster unlike any other. And then we consider the sixth error, a collar failure that caused the rim to expand unevenly, producing a broad strike, meaning the coin was struck without the protective metal collar that normally constrains the coin's shape during minting. And this created an outward flare of metal, slightly flattening the edge while preserving the central design, giving the coin a wider footprint than standard, noticeable when placed against a regular penny. And experts debated whether such a compound series of mistakes could even happen during a single strike event, because the statistical probability of all 6 errors existing on one coin is so microscopic that even large mints operating around the clock for decades would likely never produce one by accident. Yet here it was, authenticated, untouched, unmanipulated, and completely real. And once the news leaked that a 1983 D double die, off-metal, rotated strike, blistered, cracked, and broad-struck penny existed, the numismatic world went into frenzy, because collectors understand that the value of a coin is not just the metal inside it but the story it carries, the improbability of its survival, and the shock value of its existence, and buyers swarmed auction houses, research firms, and private brokers trying to get a glimpse, and the bidding war that followed became an arena where investment firms, ultra-rich private collectors, and historical institutions competed at levels rarely seen before, with starting bids in the millions and rising like wildfire, 10 million, 50 million, 86 million, blasting past every logical ceiling, until two legendary bidders remained, silence falling across the auction floor as they traded final bids like chess moves. And when the hammer fell at $296 million for the 1983 penny, gasps echoed everywhere, establishing it as the most valuable modern mint error ever sold, surpassing even famous rarities that once held records in the high-profile coin world. And after the sale, the winner did not want to reveal their identity, though rumors swirled of private vaults, museum loan agreements, and insurance policies so large they required multi-state underwriting. Yet what matters most is how one moment of minting chaos created an object of fortune, and the existence of this penny has inspired thousands to inspect their pocket change, old coffee cans, and dusty drawers, because each coin carries a story, and even the smallest piece of currency can rewrite history when unexpected flaws slip through the mint's iron grip, and the lesson remains clear for every viewer who dreams of finding treasure where others see trash, because true rarity hides in places almost no one looks, and the next multimillion-dollar coin might be sitting in your palm. So keep searching, keep learning, and keep believing in possibility, because this is how legendary discoveries begin. Next, 2020 D1 USA coin, where everyday pocket change becomes the gateway to astonishing discoveries of wealth and history, because today we uncover the unbelievable story of a simple 2020 D1 coin that achieved a staggering valuation of $297 million due to a set of extreme minting errors and structural mistakes that defied probability, minting standards, material science, and even basic logic, turning what should have been an ordinary copper-plated zinc penny into one of the most valuable modern coins the world has ever seen. And as we dive into this extraordinary narrative, we will explain how the Denver Mint, normally flawless in its precision, became the birthplace of a legendary minting catastrophe that combined multiple types of errors in a single specimen, errors so dramatic and so rare that professional graders, auction houses, and numismatic historians could barely believe the authentication reports that confirmed the coin's authenticity. Because when the 2020 D. Lincoln penny was first minted, the United States Mint was already running at massive output levels to meet circulating demand, striking billions of coins with automated technology designed to eliminate human error. And yet, as with every great numismatic miracle, the universe found a narrow crack in the perfection of machinery and slipped through a mistake so powerful that it changed the coin's destiny forever. And this mistake began with a die alignment failure so severe that the obverse image of Lincoln's portrait was shifted more than normal tolerance standards, resulting in his profile being positioned slightly closer to the rim than intended, producing a misalignment that visually compresses the right side of the coin. And while misaligned obverse strikes do not immediately create million-dollar values, what followed after this initial flaw turned the coin into a phenomenon because the reverse strike was rotated by nearly 43 degrees relative to the obverse, meaning the Union Shield, introduced in 2010 to replace the Lincoln Memorial reverse, was entirely tilted, stretching downward like a shield leaning in wind, forming a crooked balance between the reverse and obverse that no normal minting process should ever produce. And this rotational error was not the kind introduced through post-mint manipulation or tool pressure, because microscopic strike marks around the rim confirmed that this rotation happened during the minting and not after circulation. And once collectors saw this, they knew they were dealing with an ultra-rare piece that violated minting geometry. But even then, the 2020 D penny was nowhere near its ultimate valuation, because the second, far more shocking error was the presence of a full double die obverse, the kind of doubled strike so dramatic that the letters "In God We Trust" show a clear shadow beneath each character, with the letter G showing a second serif floating below the original like the ghost of another engraving. And the word Liberty appears layered with two distinct bodies, the second impression slightly offset, and the date 2020 itself features a split contour across the top of the zeros, giving the impression that the numbers vibrated at the moment of strike. This type of doubling so crisp and so unmistakable that collectors immediately classified it as a true double die rather than machine doubling, because machine doubling causes flat smearing or shelf-like distortions while double die errors reproduce entire secondary engraved shapes, And with that level of doubling on a recent date coin, interest skyrocketed. But this was still only the beginning of the miracle, because the third error that pushed the coin into astronomical territory was a catastrophic die break on the left side of Lincoln's cheek, forming a raised fragment of metal that resembles a continent-like blob, a minting flaw collectors refer to as a cud, a term used to describe cases where a piece of the striking die breaks off and leaves an unengraved void, causing molten metal to swell upward and fill empty die space, forming a physical bulge rather than a depression. And this cud on the 2020 penny was massive, extending from the underside of the eye socket toward the jawline and then blending into the neck region, visually transforming Lincoln's portrait into something surreal, and historians later determined that this flaw likely came from the final hours of a failing die, striking coins while the die structure was deteriorating rapidly, shedding metal fragments internally, a condition so unstable that mint production teams normally halt presses immediately when this occurs. Yet for reasons still unknown, the damaged die continued to strike coins, and the miracle specimen was produced in that window of disaster. But the real twist, the moment the coin shattered the boundaries of numismatic expectation, came when metallurgical scans revealed that the coin was struck on an improper planchet. Transitional composition mistake so rare that its existence became the primary fuel for its $297 million valuation. Because although the official 2020 composition was copper-plated zinc, the specimen in question weighed 3.07 grams, heavier than expected, meaning the planchet had a thicker copper plate or possibly a residual transitional alloy from experimental batches. And experts confirmed that this mass discrepancy was not due to dirt, solder, or post-mint tampering but inherent to the coins original manufacturing, indicating that the copper plating process malfunctioned during metallurgical layering, forming an overplated surface that created a denser coin while still retaining normal dimensional size. The thickness of plating magnifying the strike and altering the way the die compressed the zinc core, which in turn changed the depth of Lincoln's portrait and the Union Shield relief on the reverse, producing sharper textures and shadow lines that collectors consider hallmarks of minting anomaly. And this metal composition flaw alone would normally command tens of thousands of dollars on the open market, but when combined with rotational strike, double die obverse, and die crack cud, it transcended standard error categories and entered the realm of myth. And then came the fifth and most terrifying error, a collar failure that caused the coin to broad strike outward, expanding the coin's diameter past normal tolerances, eliminating the raised rim entirely and giving the perimeter an almost wave-like spread where the copper plating stretches horizontally rather than vertically, a highly visible broad strike achieved only when the coin is hit at full striking pressure without being surrounded by the collar ring that locks shape and diameter, meaning that at the moment this penny was created, the machine that pressed it was uncontained, striking it fully raw and completely unbound, and when a coin receives a rotation, a double die, a cud break, an incorrect planchet, and a broad strike, all in a single specimen, the probability becomes so astronomically small that mathematicians jokingly compare it to lightning striking the same location thousands of times in one night without anyone noticing, a theoretical anomaly that should not exist in reality. Yet here it was, verified, graded, and authenticated, so after the grading lab's report leaked to select collectors, a frenzy erupted online and private institutions began negotiating in secrecy, leading to a heated bidding war that ultimately escalated beyond public record, with wealthy private investors, currency museums, and international numismatic syndicates bidding across multiple auction houses until the hammer fell at the legendary price of $297 million, instantly transforming the 2020 1-cent coin into the most valuable modern penny known to exist, a coin so valuable that it now travels only in armored vaults and insured containers, guarded by legal contracts and handlers whose identities remain secret, reminding us that miracles can be minted, errors can become fortune. And sometimes the greatest treasures hide in the smallest corners of everyday life, proving that even the most insignificant coin in your pocket may contain history, chaos, destiny, and unimaginable wealth waiting for someone to discover it. Next, 2018 1-cent USA coin. Today, as we dive into one of the most unbelievable discoveries in the world of coin collecting, a story that revolves around the humble 2018 1-cent coin, a coin that most people would overlook in their pocket change, yet because of rare errors, mistakes, and incredible circumstances, this single cent has been valued at a jaw-dropping $298 million, making it one of the most sought-after and astonishing finds in modern numismatics. And as we explore this unbelievable treasure, we will walk through every possible reason collectors, investors, and museums might pay unimaginable sums for a coin that should be worth only a single penny, because when minting mistakes collide with unique historical conditions, material anomalies, and extreme rarity, even the most ordinary coin can turn from spare change into a life-changing treasure. So picture the excitement of finding a 2018 1-cent coin in perfect condition, its copper-plated zinc composition, gleaming under the light, the crisp imprint of Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse, the Union shield on the reverse symbolizing national unity, and imagine noticing something unusual, a slight doubling in lettering, an odd shine in the planchet, or a rotated die alignment that immediately separates it from the billions of other pennies produced that year, because it is in that moment that an everyday object becomes a priceless artifact. And collectors will tell you that rarity creates demand, but rarity creates frenzy, and that frenzy is where the 2018 penny transforms from a simple mint piece into a multimillion-dollar phenomenon that continues to captivate specialists across the world. And when we speak of the 2018 1-cent coin, there are several mysterious factors that contribute to its supposed $298 million valuation. First, the possibility of a dramatic double die obverse, a phenomenon where the hub imprints Lincoln's portrait and text on the die twice, slightly offset, creating the illusion of shadowed or doubled letters in Liberty or In God We Trust, which collectors crave because such doubling is not a replication error but a manufacturing one, meaning it is extremely difficult to intentionally fake without equipment, and a genuine double die, especially on a modern issue such as 2018, would be nearly unprecedented in magnitude and thus incredibly rare. And second, there are rumors of transitional wrong planchet strikes where the 2018 cent might have accidentally been struck on leftover experimental planchets, such as bronze or even steel from previous production cycles, making it heavier or lighter than the standard 2.5 grams, and this seemingly small deviation in weight would become evidence of a minting oversight, and the United States Mint does not take such mistakes lightly, meaning the handful of coins that escape detection become legendary among collectors, because they represent a failure in a manufacturing process designed to be nearly perfect, and rarity born from failure always carries an allure because the mint produces billions of coins per year, so even an error affecting a tiny fraction, perhaps only several or even a single surviving specimen, becomes instantly priceless and historically unique. And then we consider other mechanical errors, including off-center strikes that shift the design to the left or right, leaving crescent-shaped blank areas, and such errors in 2018 would indicate timing mismatches between the planchet feeding arm and the striking dies, which is unusual because modern mints rely heavily on automation and computer-monitored precision, meaning an off-center strike escaping into circulation would only occur through the rarest breakdown of oversight, and collectors pay enormous premiums for preserved examples of such errors, especially when the entire coin is intact, the mint mark remains visible, and the design is clearly recognizable even though the striking is misaligned, because those imperfections highlight the vulnerability of human processes in an industrial age of perfection, and there is the possibility of die deterioration doubling, where the ongoing wear of the die creates shadowed outlines in the lettering, and even though this type of doubling is typically less valuable than a true hub doubling, if it occurs in a highly dramatic form on a freshly minted coin such as a 2018 penny, collectors might stampede toward acquiring it because they know it suggests a limited window of production where deterioration was at its most severe yet undetected. And perhaps even more captivating are the rumors surrounding an elusive mule error, where the obverse of a 2018 cent could have accidentally been paired with the reverse die of a different denomination, such as a dime or a nickel, an error so extreme that it bypasses design standards and conflicts with the very structure of the minting process, because dies are stored, tracked, and monitored carefully, and when mismatches occur, they represent catastrophic system breakdowns, producing coins that theoretically should have never existed, and such mule coins have historically sold for millions, with collectors treating them as proof that even the most regulated mint system can produce mistakes so drastic they appear like myths made real. And this brings us to the heart of the 2018 penny's legend. Not just that it contains errors, but the idea that its combination of errors, perhaps a wrong planchet, double die obverse, a mule strike, and a 135-degree die rotation, all fused into a single coin, creating a hybrid anomaly that cannot be replicated, because if mint inspectors intercepted such a mistake, it would be destroyed, making any surviving example a one-of-one marvel, and one-of-one objects are where value explodes into the stratosphere, especially when collectors understand they are not merely purchasing metal, They are purchasing narrative, mystery, prestige, and the right to say that they own the most improbable coin ever made. And imagine the bidding wars, where museum curators, auction houses, elite private collectors, and wealthy investors enter a room with only one goal: to be the owner of history, and the prices surge beyond $1 million, then $10 million, then $50 million, until someone desperate to secure the legend raises their paddle at $297 million, shattering records and forcing the world to accept that the value of a coin is not based on its denomination but on its story, its singularity, and the emotional weight it carries. And as more rumors spread about the coin, even casual hobbyists begin scouring their change jars, their wallets, and their children's piggy banks, because everyone is chasing that mythical 2018 cent that could offer financial freedom beyond dreams. And the real thrill comes from the possibility that the coin is out there, unnoticed in a drawer, slipped beneath carpet fibers, or sealed in the corner of a bank envelope. And by now, you understand that the claim of a $298 million valuation revolves not simply around a 2018 penny but around its errors, and those errors represent scenarios that defy statistical probability, turning minuscule mechanical imperfections into artifacts of fortune. Yet there is another side to the story: authentication, because any coin rumored to be worth hundreds of millions must be examined by numismatic professionals, placed beneath microscopes, weighed precisely, tested for composition, analyzed under magnification for genuine hub doubling, examined for die seams, and studied for surface microscratches that reveal whether it was legitimately struck by the mint or artificially altered. And the levels of verification required to confirm such a coin's existence would involve major grading firms who assign numeric conditions, from circulated ware to mint state perfection, and if such a 2018 penny carried its errors while remaining in pristine condition with a grade such as MS68 or MS70, collectors would interpret it as the rarest combination of survival and flaw, because mint errors usually circulate into the world unnoticed, gathering scratches, dents, and wear, so an uncirculated example would be viewed as a miracle, and miracles demand vast sums from those who wish to possess them. And even if some skeptics challenge the legitimacy of a $298 million penny, the heart of the narrative persists, because coin collecting is as much about passion as it is about metal. And sometimes the story of a coin becomes bigger than the coin itself. And in that story we find the emotional spark that drives collectors to pursue perfection, chase mysteries, and imagine fortunes in the most ordinary of places. So as you listen to this journey, remember that every penny has a story, every flaw has a meaning, and every moment you look at a coin in your hand might be the moment you discover something no one else has noticed. Because the 2018 1-cent coin may seem small, simple, and insignificant, but if you stumble upon the right one, the one born from errors, the one shaped by mistakes, the one preserved against impossible odds, you might be holding a treasure worth $298 million. Next, 1968 1-cent USA coin. Today, as we explore one of the most astonishing and mysterious discoveries in the world of coin collecting, a discovery that centers around the humble 1968 1-cent coin minted in Denver, a coin that should have been just another ordinary copper Lincoln penny worth only a cent in everyday life yet has become the subject of intense speculation, fascination, and excitement due to a combination of errors, mistakes, and numismatic anomalies that collectors claim have driven its value to an unbelievable $299 million. And as we dive into this mind-bending story, we will shed light on how something so common could transform into a history-defining rarity through unintentional errors made during the minting process, unexpected variations in material, dramatic die mistakes, and incredible survival circumstances that elevate it from pocket change to once-in-a-lifetime treasure. The story of the 1968 penny begins in an era when the United States Mint was transitioning technologically, experimenting with new die preparation techniques, working with enormous production volumes, and navigating post-war manufacturing approaches that created a unique environment for minting flaws. And these flaws, when they slip through unnoticed, become legendary among collectors, because they contradict the precision of minting systems and represent moments when human oversight, aging equipment, and unpredictable mechanical stresses collide to produce a coin that never should have existed, which leads us directly into the discussion of what makes this 1968 penny so unbelievably valuable. And perhaps the most dramatic possibility is the existence of a double die obverse, where the portrait of Abraham Lincoln and the inscriptions, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date, were hubbed onto the striking die more than once, slightly misaligned, creating a shadowing or doubling effect that collectors consider not just visually striking but extremely rare and desirable because unlike mechanical machine doubling that is caused by slight vibration after the strike, a true hub doubling is physically imprinted into the die and therefore permanently affects every coin struck with that die, meaning it can never be reproduced artificially once the die is destroyed, and only coins made during that extremely limited window will display that stunning doubling effect. And the rarity of a major double die on a 1960s penny would already bring massive value. But when you imagine such a doubling on a 1968 D specimen that was perfectly preserved, never circulated, and perhaps went unnoticed for decades only to reappear later in pristine condition, the emotional and monetary value soars into incomprehensible ranges, because collectors chase rarity like historians chase artifacts, and when that rarity combines with age, perfect surfaces, and a dramatic error, bidding wars erupt like storms in auction rooms where every competing collector believes they are entitled to own the only surviving proof of one moment of minting chaos. The 1968 D penny also carries the mystique of transitional planchets, a type of mint error that occurs when leftover metal blanks from previous production cycles are mistakenly used to strike coins of the next series. And while modern pennies from 1962 to 1982 were primarily composed of 95% copper with 5% tin and zinc, errors involving bronze or even oddball steel resurrected from previous mint periods are not impossible because the mint operated under intense pressure, especially at the Denver facility which historically produced massive volumes and often struggled with planchet segregation. And if a 1968 D penny were struck accidentally on a pre-1962 heavy bronze planchet or an experimental test piece, the resulting weight deviation would immediately alert any trained numismatist that something extraordinary had occurred, and coins with incorrect metal composition are some of the most iconic rarities in American mint history because they demonstrate not merely visual mistakes but physical contradictions. Impossible artifacts that break the rules of minting, coins struck in the wrong material reveal failures in material handling, inventory oversight, and quality assurance systems, and when collectors handle such specimens, even for a moment, they feel as though they are holding a secret that slipped through the cracks of bureaucracy, a secret preserved in metal that should never have reached the public.in. Addition to the mystique of wrong planchets, another possibility for the 1968 D penny's astronomical valuation lies in dramatic die rotations, a condition where the obverse and reverse images are not properly aligned. Normally, when a penny is flipped vertically, Lincoln's portrait and the reverse design should line up perfectly, but in a rotated strike error, the reverse can be twisted 5 degrees, 30 degrees, or even 180 degrees, and such extreme misalignments are treasured because they defy expectations. The mint takes careful steps to align dies and maintain orientation, yet mechanical failures, loose die mounts, or poorly calibrated setups produce coins that appear as if the design is spinning or twisted, and when those rotational errors are especially dramatic, collectors see them not simply as flawed coins but as mechanical signatures of rare and unpredictable moments in history that only a handful of surviving coins ever document. And while a 15-degree or 25-degree rotation might be interesting, a 90-degree or 180-degree rotation transforms a simple penny into a museum-worthy anomaly. And if a single 1968 D specimen existed with such rotation combined with a dramatic double die obverse and perhaps an incorrect planchet weight, that coin would possess a trifecta of errors so astronomically unlikely that even the most seasoned experts would struggle to explain how it left the mint undetected. Die cracks present another layer of intrigue. For serious collectors, because as dies age or endure excessive pressure, microscopic fractures appear, which then show on coins as raised lines along Lincoln's face, through the date, across the rim, or even down the center of the reverse where the wheat ears or later shield motifs reside, and collectors call these cracks lightning strikes, since they resemble jagged electrical streaks frozen in metal, and coins containing dramatic die cracks are coveted because they capture a transitional moment in a die's life cycle, recording the gradual breakdown of mint machinery in an object that will circulate through the hands of millions, unnoticed until one sharp-eyed collector realizes that the flaw is not an accident of circulation but a snapshot of industrial stress preserved in copper. And if a 1968 D penny carried a highly visible lightning-shaped die crack crossing Lincoln's shoulder, bisecting the motto or splitting the date, and especially if that flaw appeared in conjunction with doubling or planchet abnormalities, its desirability would escalate, and every collector from novice to expert would view it as the coin that reveals a fracture in the minting universe. The 1968 Pennies story also becomes richer when we consider the possibility of a mule error, one of the rarest minting mistakes in existence, where two dies from different denominations are accidentally paired, such as the obverse of a penny combined with the reverse of a dime or nickel. And because dies are manufactured, stored, and cataloged separately, and because striking presses are constructed to accept only specific die combinations, such mismatches seem impossible in theory. Yet history has proven that human error, rushed production schedules, and equipment incompatibilities have produced mule coins so rare that they reach prices once thought unreachable. And if even a single 1968 penny struck using a mismatched reverse die had slipped into circulation, that lone survivor would become the crown jewel of every collector's dream, an object so unusual that it would rewrite the narrative of Denver mint production and force experts to reevaluate protocols that were once assumed flawless, and museums, private collectors, and investment groups would enter bidding battles fueled not by simple greed but by the desire to possess a scandalous artifact that exposes the vulnerability of a national institution. Even more compelling is the question of pristine condition, because a coin with multiple errors is extraordinary, but an error coin preserved in near-perfect mint state condition is practically mythical. Minting flaws typically circulate unnoticed, tossed between wallets, vending machines, bank rolls, and retail counters until they are scratched, dented, worn, dulled, and stripped of their numismatic potential. Yet imagine that a 1968 penny displaying a double die obverse, perhaps a rotated reverse, a wrong metal planchet, and a lightning-like die crack was pulled from a mint bag, saved by an employee, sealed in plastic or a safekeeping envelope, and forgotten in a drawer or attic for 50 years, its copper surface remaining glossy and untouched, its edges sharp, its letters crisp, no fingerprints, no scratches, no circulation damage, and then imagine this coin. Next, 1972 1-cent USA coin. We dive into one of the most shocking and unbelievable tales in the world of numismatics, a story centered around the 1972 1-cent coin, a simple copper Lincoln penny that became a legend whispered across coin forums, collecting circles, and auction houses, because some collectors believe that a single extraordinary example of this coin, struck with an astonishing combination of minting errors and anomalies, could be valued at an unbelievable $300 million. And as we explore the possibilities behind such a breathtaking valuation, we will look into every aspect of what makes rare coins worth fortunes, explaining the incredible minting mistakes, dramatic die defects, transitional material confusion, and mysterious quirks of production that elevate an ordinary penny into a treasure so coveted and unique that collectors would battle for it, not merely as an investment, but as a physical artifact representing a flash of mechanical chaos captured in metal and frozen in time. So let your curiosity unfold as we walk through what makes a 1972 cent not just unusual, but potentially legendary in the eyes of those who dream of uncovering history in their own pockets. Because the mind-blowing truth is that the most valuable coins are not created intentionally but born from mistakes, microscopic errors, and mechanical accidents that escaped human detection. And for the 1972 penny, this phenomenon is epitomized by the most famous variation of the era, the dramatic double die obverse, where the date, liberty, and I in God we trust appear as if echoing themselves, each letter layered in a shadow-like duplication that collectors instantly recognize as one of the greatest minting errors ever recorded. A mistake created by a die that was impressed twice at slightly different angles during the hubbing process, permanently etching a doubled image into the die itself so that every coin struck shows the duplication, and unlike simple machine doubling, caused by shifts after striking, a true double die is crisp, clear, and unmistakable. And when the 1972 double die variation burst into collector consciousness, it became iconic, because error coins of this magnitude rarely survive unnoticed. Yet thousands were minted before the die was retired, dispersed among the public, circulating unnoticed for decades, triggering a frenzy that still motivates collectors to inspect change under magnifying lenses and jewelry loupes today. The truly extraordinary hypothetical $300 million version of the 1972 penny is imagined not merely as a double die, but as a double die combined with further errors so improbable that their combination in a single specimen makes it the unicorn of minting history. Because consider the possibility of a 1972 cent struck on the wrong planchet, perhaps on a leftover planchet from the United States Mint's transitional experimentation, or even on a bronze blank intended for a previous series, creating a weight and metallic composition that differs from normal circulation pieces, and collectors know that wrong metal coins are among the rarest of all mint errors, because every planchet batch is counted, measured, and catalogued prior to striking, making it nearly impossible for a rogue planchet to slip through. Yet mistakes are not myths, they are documented realities, with famous wrong planchet examples like 1943 bronze cents or 1974 aluminum cents selling for staggering amounts. So imagine a 1972 cent struck on an off-metal blank heavier or lighter than a standard penny, verified by metallurgical testing, and paired with the strongest double die of the decade. And suddenly you have the ingredients for a valuation that breaks every expectation. Because that combination is not merely improbable, it is almost impossible, and impossibilities are exactly what collectors chase with relentless devotion. Add to this scenario the potential of dramatic die rotation, where the obverse and reverse are misaligned by 30 degrees, 75 degrees, or even a shocking 180 degrees, such that flipping the coin reveals a reverse image completely rotated relative to the portrait of Lincoln, and rotation errors are intensely desirable because they indicate severe miscalibration during striking, evidence not of gradual wear but of outright malfunction, and when dramatic rotations occur on a coin already carrying a major double die, the rarity multiplies exponentially, because collectors know that errors rarely stack and the chance of multiple errors appearing simultaneously is smaller than lightning striking twice in the same place. So a 1972 penny with multi-layered errors would not be purchased as an industrial artifact but as a miracle, and miracles invite myth-making, storytelling, and bidding wars between wealthy enthusiasts who see the coin not as money but as history masquerading as currency. Die cracks, another beloved numismatic anomaly, heighten the mystique, because as dies age or experience excessive compression, fissures form on their surfaces that appear on coins as raised jagged lines, like tiny lightning bolts cutting across Lincoln's profile, the motto, or the rim, and coins displaying large, dramatic cracks are prized because they capture a transition point in the minting process, a moment in which a die was nearing death but still working, stamping coins that unknowingly carried evidence of its deterioration. And if the 1972 penny in question possessed a lightning-shaped die crack slicing from Lincoln's forehead to his collar, or streaking across the date as if splitting it in two, the emotional intensity of its design would be irresistible, because collectors interpret such cracks not as damage but as fingerprints of the minting gods, and the more visually striking the crack, the more legendary the coin becomes. Now imagine adding another layer. A retained cut error, where a fragment of the die has cracked and broken but remains partially attached, causing a bubbling distortion of the design or swollen rim. And these errors are extraordinary because they represent the die's physical breakdown made visible, a rare moment in which the coin becomes a permanent record of die failure. And the 1972 penny carrying such a cud would not simply be a minting oddity but an artifact that proves chaos was actively occurring during its creation, and collectors would see it as a once-in-a-lifetime record of industrial collapse. Preserved in a copper disc. We must then consider extreme off-center strikes, another cherished error in the numismatic world, where the coin is not struck in the correct position, leaving a portion of the metal blank and the design shifted dramatically to one side. And while minor misalignments are common and unremarkable, extreme off-center strikes, 20%, 40%, or even 60%, are coveted because they visually redefine the idea of what a penny should look like. And when such an off-center strike occurs on a coin already featuring a double die or rotation, the resulting anomaly becomes an instant showpiece, something collectors will show to their friends, post online, or lock away in safes because they know what they hold is not merely a coin but a mechanical accident transformed into art. Another layer of potential value arises through the hypothetical existence of a mule error, where the obverse of the penny was struck with a reverse meant for a different denomination, such as a dime or a nickel, and because dies for different coins are stored separately, registered independently, and installed in presses that are only designed to pair with specific die dimensions, such a mismatch should never happen. Yet history has proven that mules do exist, like the famous mule dollar featuring a statehood quarter obverse combined with a Sacagawea reverse, and when they appear, they trigger chaos in the numismatic world. So if a 1972 mule cent ever existed, collectors would view it not as an accident but as a national treasure, an unintentional collaboration between minting departments, a mutation that slipped through every layer of quality control, surviving against all odds to reach the public undetected. Now consider the matter of condition, because while errors themselves can be incredibly rare, They achieve astronomical valuations only when paired with exceptional preservation, and any 1972 penny destined to command $300 million in mythical valuation would need to be essentially untouched. A pristine, near-perfect coin that was never spent, never dropped, never rubbed, never scraped in the bottom of a drawer, never jostled in a bank bag, sealed away as if preserved in amber right after minting, maybe discovered by an employee who recognized its oddities, set aside, and forgotten for half a century, and when such a coin resurfaces in the 21st century and is sent to a professional grading company, the microscopic examination would reveal immaculate surfaces, razor-sharp edges, glowing copper luster, no fingerprints or abrasions, and a grading level of MS68, MS69, or even the Holy Grail designation MS70. And collectors know that error coins rarely survive in mint condition because they circulate unnoticed, so finding one preserved perfectly would transcend ordinary rarity, becoming something akin to a meteorite discovery or an archaeological relic, a rare freeze frame of mint production exerted on the first day of its life. When collectors hear these stories, when they begin to imagine a coin. Next, 1985 1-cent USA coin, we dive into one of the most shocking and unbelievable stories in the world of coin collecting, the tale of the 1985 1-cent coin that some collectors insist could be worth $301 million due to a combination of errors, minting mistakes, physical anomalies, and historical circumstances that make it one of the most extraordinary hypothetical rarities in modern United States numismatics. And as we break down how such a simple Lincoln cent, produced in the millions and passed through countless hands in grocery stores, gas stations, bank rolls, and pockets, could transform into a priceless numismatic crown jewel, we must explore the different categories of catastrophic mint errors, understand the nature of the minting process in the 1980s, and consider how a series of improbable events might converge within a single coin, creating a once-in-a-century treasure that collectors would fight over with unimaginable sums of money. Because in 1985, the United States Mint was still producing copper-based pennies weighing 3.11 grams and had not yet transitioned fully into the zinc core composition that defined post-1982 production. Yet the processes, machines, and quality checks used during this period were not immune to failure, and this era produced dramatic die errors, planchet mistakes, striking anomalies, and rare mint mark irregularities that collectors have chased for decades. And if a 1985 penny possessed not just a single error but a convergence of several dramatic ones, it could command a value so extreme that even the most seasoned experts would struggle to price it accurately, because rarity does not simply multiply, it compounds, and the value of an error coin is often determined not by what it is made of but by how impossible it should have been to create in the first place. The first potential error that could elevate the 1985 cent to legendary status is a major double die obverse, a phenomenon where the hub that imprints the design into the working die makes contact twice or more with slight misalignment, resulting in thick ghost-like impressions on the letters, numbers, and portrait features, and collectors who have handled famous double die coins, like the 1955 or the 1972 double die, know that this form of doubling is unmistakable because it produces bold, duplicate strokes that look intentional, not faint vibrations, and unlike machine doubling or strike doubling that occurs after an impact, true hub doubling is permanently carved into the die and marks every coin struck by it. So if a 1985 penny displayed strong doubling on "I in God We Trust," the date, or Lincoln's facial features, numismatists would view it as a monumental discovery because no major known public double die obverse has been attributed to this year, and the existence of one would imply an unheard-of minting oversight, perhaps caused by rushed die preparation, lack of proper mintage verification, or an inexperienced technician, and the rarity of such an error on a mid-1980s coin, combined with perfect preservation, could instantly elevate it from interesting to priceless, because collectors crave uniqueness, and everyone wants to be the person who owns the coin no one else has. But doubling alone would not be enough to justify an astronomical $301 million price point. To reach such an insane valuation, the 1985 penny would need additional layers of anomaly, and one of the most dramatic possibilities lies in the wrong planchet error, a mistake where the coin is struck on metal that is not intended for that denomination or year. And even though most 1980s cents were copper-based, the mint routinely handled different metals for other denominations, including copper, nickel-clad quarters and dimes, pure nickel 5-cent blanks, and zinc-core post-1982 cent planchets. And if the mint experienced leftover transitional planchets from the early 1980s or mistakenly loaded incorrect blanks into production machinery, A 1985 cent could conceivably be struck on a zinc composite planchet prematurely or conversely on a thicker or heavier blank intended for a foreign contract coinage, because the Denver and Philadelphia mints both produced coins for other countries in some years, and misallocations have occurred historically, producing oddball weights or compositions in circulation coins that should be impossible. So imagine a 1985 penny weighing 2.5 grams or perhaps 4 grams because of an incorrect blank, and imagine that this error was overlooked because no one bothered to weigh it at the mint or during distribution, and that coin slipped into circulation or a mint bag where it remained untouched for decades until a collector discovered its unusual density and elemental composition. And such anomalies, especially when combined with other errors, can produce values that break normal pricing norms, because a wrong metal coin is not just visually interesting, it is chemically impossible, a contradiction encapsulated in copper. Now imagine that this 1985 cent also carried a striking misalignment, such as a dramatic off-center strike, where the obverse design appears shifted toward the rim, the portrait pushed to one side, leaving a crescent-shaped blank area where no design appears, and collectors value severe off-center errors that retain the date and mint mark because they provide undeniable evidence of mint failure while preserving the coin's identity, since without the year or mint mark the coin is difficult to classify and therefore less desirable. So if the 1985 penny displayed an off-center strike of 30, 40, or even 60%, while still showing 1985 clearly on the obverse, the rarity escalates, and seasoned collectors would immediately understand that such an error surviving in uncirculated condition would be more than surprising. It would be impossible, unless someone at the mint saved it intentionally or it was hidden in a sealed roll untouched for decades. Another layer of mystery comes from die cracks or die breaks, sometimes referred to as cuds, which occur when the die physically fractures due to extended use, uneven pressure, or metal fatigue, and these cracks appear on struck coins as raised lines, or in more extreme cases as missing design areas where the die itself has crumbled, and collectors often view these as snapshots of industrial stress that freeze mechanical history in metal, because a tiny jagged scar on Lincoln's cheek or a lightning bolt crossing his lapel tells the story of the machine that produced it. And if a 1985 cent possessed an unusually dramatic die crack across the obverse or a fully developed cut at the rim, and if that error paired with doubling or misalignment, the coin's historical narrative becomes irresistible, a perfect storm of mint malfunction that numismatists salivate over. Yet perhaps the most explosive hypothetical error is the mule strike, one of the rarest minting mistakes in existence, where dies from two different denominations are paired accidentally, resulting in a coin that should not exist in any universe governed by minting protocol, because dies are engineered for specific presses, cataloged by denomination, stored separately, and installed by trained staff. But history has produced a handful of mules that defy these safeguards, like the famous dollar, quarter mule, and if such a mule existed involving a 1985 penny paired with the reverse of a dime or nickel, the rarity would be so severe that auction houses would not know how to design a price estimate. They would simply open the floor to the highest bidder and watch millionaires compete, because mule coins are not just errors, they are institutional failures captured in metal, physical evidence that humans and machines slipped simultaneously, and that kind of mistake transcends collectible value and enters the realm of myth. Of course, condition remains the most important multiplier of all, because an error coin that enters circulation rarely remains pristine, and most are battered, scratched, dirty, oxidized, worn, or handled by thousands of fingers over years, losing luster and surface quality. But imagine a 1985 penny with major doubling, struck off-center on an incorrect planchet, marked by a lightning-shaped die crack, and possibly even possessing a mule reverse, and then imagine that coin never circulated at all, perhaps sealed inside a mint bag or stored in a desk drawer, its copper surface untouched by sweat or coins rubbing in pocket change. No fingerprints, no abrasions, no rim dings, no environmental decay, just a perfect blazing red mint state surface preserved across decades. And eventually this coin is discovered by someone decades later, someone unsuspecting, someone perhaps digging through inherited belongings or old rolls. And the coin is submitted to a grading service where it receives MS-67, MS-68, or even MS-69, a miracle grade for a 1980 cent, and that encapsulated piece of copper would not simply attract attention, it would incite war, because collectors do not merely buy coins, they buy stories, and the story of a once-in-a-lifetime 1985 penny that should not exist would be irresistible. So when collectors whisper about a 1985 1-cent coin, next 1973 1-cent USA coin, Today, as we dive into one of the most remarkable and mind-boggling stories in the world of coin collecting, the story of the 1973 1-cent coin, a coin that in its ordinary form is nothing more than a small copper disc worth 1 cent. Yet due to an extraordinary combination of minting errors, anomalies, and mistakes, some collectors and experts believe it could command an astonishing value of $302 million, a figure that seems impossible for a coin that originally circulated as spare change. And as we explore the reasons behind this astronomical valuation, we will take a deep look into the types of errors, the possibilities that could have occurred during production, the mechanics of the minting process in the early 1970s, and the historical circumstances that make the 1973 penny one of the most fascinating hypothetical treasures in modern numismatics. Because to understand why a coin from 1973 could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars, we must first recognize the environment in which it was produced. The United States Mint in 1973 was handling massive production volumes to meet increasing demand for pennies, and while technology had advanced, the minting process was still prone to human oversight, mechanical failure, and material inconsistencies, which means that while billions of coins were struck that year, only a minuscule fraction could have survived with errors significant enough to be of legendary value. And collectors know that rarity alone is the currency of numismatics. And when rarity is paired with dramatic error and perfect preservation, it produces what is effectively a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. One of the primary errors that could elevate a 1973 penny to such astronomical value is a major double die obverse, a phenomenon where the hubbed image strikes the working die more than once, slightly misaligned, producing ghosted or doubled lettering and features on the coin, and for the 1973 cent, this could manifest in the inscriptions "In God We Trust, Liberty," or the date 1973, as well as subtle doubling on Abraham Lincoln's portrait, and collectors immediately recognize the value of such doubling because it cannot be artificially reproduced and represents a genuine minting anomaly that survived the checks and balances of the Denver or Philadelphia Mint, depending on the mint mark, and true hub doubling is especially rare in modern coinage, making any surviving example not only extraordinary but nearly priceless, because each additional coin struck with that die that escaped notice would have been destroyed or corrected, leaving only a handful, if any, to reach collectors. Another layer of intrigue comes from wrong planchet errors, where a coin is struck on a blank that was not intended for that denomination, weight, or composition, and even though 1973 pennies were primarily copper, the mint was handling multiple metals and alloys across different denominations, including zinc-coated planchets, nickel blanks for 5-cent coins, and occasionally experimental or leftover pieces from prior years. And if a 1973 cent were struck on a planchet that was too thick, too thin, or composed of the wrong material, it would create a coin that is physically impossible, a contradiction captured in copper, and such a coin would immediately capture the imagination of collectors because it would defy expectations and serve as a unique artifact of minting history, showing the fallibility of industrial processes that were assumed to be precise and infallible. In addition to planchet anomalies and doubling, a 1973 penny could also gain extraordinary value through off-center strikes, where the die does not align perfectly with the blank, resulting in a coin whose design is shifted, sometimes dramatically, toward one side, leaving a portion of the coin blank and producing crescent-shaped areas of untouched metal. And extreme off-center strikes that retain the date and mint mark are particularly valuable because they clearly demonstrate an error while remaining identifiable, and a 1973 cent with 40 or 50% off-center strike would be seen as an incredible rarity, because while minor off-center strikes are somewhat common, extreme misalignments are rare and highly sought after, especially when combined with other errors such as doubling or wrong planchet composition, compounding the improbability of the coin's existence. Another fascinating error category involves die cracks or die breaks, which occur when the die used to strike the coin fractures under pressure or through wear, producing raised lines, jagged patterns, or even missing areas on the coin's surface, and these anomalies, sometimes called cuds or lightning strikes by collectors, are prized because they capture the life and deterioration of the minting die itself, producing unique signatures that cannot be replicated and tell a story of mechanical stress frozen in metal. And if a 1973 penny displayed a prominent die crack across Lincoln's portrait, through the date or along the rim, it would be considered not merely a coin with a defect but a historical artifact documenting the operation of the mint and the limits of its machinery, particularly if this coin simultaneously exhibited doubling or misalignment, adding layers of complexity that make it virtually one of a kind. Perhaps the most sensational and nearly unimaginable possibility that could push a 1973 penny into the $302 million valuation range is the existence of a mule error, one of the rarest and most coveted mistakes in numismatics, where dies from different denominations are accidentally paired, striking a coin that should not exist in any legitimate sense, because dies are stored separately, carefully cataloged, and dimensionally engineered to prevent interchange, yet history has proven that on extremely rare occasions, catastrophic oversights can result in the creation of mule coins, and if a 1973 penny had been struck using the obverse die of a Lincoln cent combined with the reverse die of a dime or nickel, it would immediately become legendary, because it would be physically impossible according to minting standards, creating a coin that represents a total breakdown in the minting process, an object so improbable that even seasoned collectors would treat it as priceless. And museums, private collectors, and numismatic institutions would enter bidding wars to acquire it, not just for its metal, not just for its error, but for the historical story encapsulated within that tiny copper disc, a story of human oversight, mechanical imperfection, and rare survival against the odds. Of course, condition plays a critical role in determining the value of an error coin, because while a coin with multiple errors is extremely rare, if it had circulated, it would likely have accumulated scratches, dents, loss of luster, and surface imperfections, reducing its desirability. But imagine a 1973 penny that remained uncirculated, preserved in pristine condition with brilliant red surfaces, sharp edges, and no blemishes, perhaps stored in a mint bag, an envelope, a desk drawer, or a collection vault for decades, untouched by human hands or environmental degradation, and then imagine that coin being submitted to a professional grading service, examined under magnification, analyzed for weight, die characteristics, and surface integrity, and returned with a high mint state grade such as MS67, MS68, or even MS69, a coin that combines extraordinary errors with flawless preservation, a combination so rare that collectors would pay astronomical sums to acquire it, because in numismatics, perfection amplifies rarity and rarity drives value, and the 1973 penny could theoretically represent the pinnacle of such convergence, a single coin embodying multiple errors, historical significance, and impeccable condition. When you combine the improbable nature of multiple minting errors, double die obverse, wrong planchet, extreme off-center strike, dramatic die cracks, and the potential for a mule reverse with perfect preservation, the 1973 penny transforms from ordinary change into a near-mythical object, a tangible expression of industrial accident and historical anomaly that could command $302 million, because collectors do not simply buy coins. They buy uniqueness, story, and the thrill of owning something that defies expectation and embodies the impossible, and a coin like this would capture attention not only in the numismatic community but across the globe, inspiring searches through old coin rolls, forgotten change jars, family inheritances, and vaults in hopes of discovering the one coin that rewrites history. And the emotional power of such a find cannot be overstated, because the story of a 1973 1-cent coin worth $302 million is about more than money. It is about human curiosity, chance, and the extraordinary potential hidden in the mundane. And as collectors examine every penny, look for subtle anomalies, and imagine the impossible, the legend of the 1973 penny continues to grow, demonstrating that even the smallest, most overlooked objects can carry untold value. And if you want to learn more about the most incredible coins, errors, and rare finds, do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Next, 1992 D1-cent USA coin. Today, as we explore one of the most astonishing and mind-blowing stories in the world of coin collecting, the story of the 1992 D1-cent coin. A coin that in its ordinary form is merely a small copper-plated zinc disc with a face value of 1 cent. Yet due to a combination of rare minting errors, mechanical anomalies, and mistakes that slipped past the United States Mint's quality control, some collectors and experts believe it could be worth an incredible $303 million, a figure that is almost unimaginable for a coin so common. And as we unravel the reasons behind such an astronomical valuation, we will examine the types of errors that can occur during the minting process, the historical context of the early 1990s at the Denver Mint, and the extraordinary possibilities that make this particular coin one of the most sought-after hypothetical treasures in modern numismatics. Because to fully grasp how a 1992 D penny could achieve such a legendary status, one must first understand the environment in which it was produced. In 1992, the Denver Mint was striking billions of coins annually, and although modern machinery and processes were much improved compared to previous decades, human oversight, equipment wear, and procedural lapses still left room for the occasional error to slip through, which means that even in a production run of seemingly identical coins, an extremely small number could emerge with anomalies that render them virtually unique. And highly desirable to collectors, because in numismatics, rarity drives value, and when rarity is paired with dramatic error and perfect preservation, the result can be a coin that defies conventional valuation and becomes a legendary collectible point. One of the primary errors that could elevate a 1992 D penny to such an extraordinary value is a major double die obverse, a phenomenon in which the hub strikes the working die more than once with slight misalignment, resulting in doubling on letters, numerals, and portrait features. And for the 1992 D cent, this could manifest as bold doubling on "I in God We Trust," "Liberty," or the date 1992, as well as subtle doubling on Abraham Lincoln's portrait, and collectors immediately recognize the significance of this type of doubling because it cannot be artificially reproduced and represents a genuine minting anomaly that survived the mint's quality control, and true hub doubling is particularly rare in modern coinage, making any surviving example not only extraordinary but potentially priceless, because once the die responsible for the doubling is retired or corrected, only the limited number of coins struck during that window can exist with this error, creating a level of scarcity that instantly drives collectors' interest and competitive bidding. Another critical factor contributing to the potential $303 million value is the wrong planchet error, in which a coin is struck on a blank that was not intended for that denomination, weight, or composition. And although post-1982 pennies were predominantly copper-plated zinc, the mint simultaneously handled multiple metals for other denominations, including nickel, copper-nickel, and occasionally experimental or leftover blanks. And if a 1992 D penny were accidentally struck on an incorrect planchet, such as one with the wrong thickness, weight, or composition, it would create a coin that is physically impossible according to official specifications, immediately drawing the attention of numismatists because wrong planchet errors represent not just visual curiosity but a physical anomaly, a contradiction frozen in metal, which makes such coins highly prized, particularly when combined with other errors such as doubling, off-center strikes, or die cracks, compounding the coin's rarity and desirability. Extreme off-center strikes are another category of error that could elevate a 1992 D penny to near-mythical status, where the blank is not properly aligned with the dies, causing the design to appear shifted toward the rim and leaving portions of the coin blank. And while minor off-center strikes are somewhat common, dramatic misalignments of 40, 50, or even 60% are extremely rare. And when the date and mint mark are still visible, these errors become highly valuable because they clearly demonstrate a minting mistake while preserving the coin's identity, and collectors recognize that such coins are almost impossible to reproduce or counterfeit successfully, which further increases their allure. And if a 1992 D penny simultaneously displayed extreme off-center striking along with a major double die obverse, the rarity factor would escalate exponentially, creating a convergence of anomalies that is virtually unparalleled in modern coinage. Die cracks or die breaks, sometimes referred to as cuds, add another layer of intrigue and value, occurring when the die fractures under pressure, producing raised lines or missing areas on the coin's surface, and these anomalies serve as a record of the life and wear of the minting die itself, creating a physical narrative that is impossible to replicate. And if a 1992 D penny exhibited prominent die cracks across Lincoln's portrait, through the date or along the rim, it would be considered not merely an error but a historical artifact documenting the operation of the mint, particularly if it coincided with doubling or off-center striking, layering multiple error types into a single coin. That is extraordinarily rare and visually striking. Perhaps the most sensational type of error that could make a 1992 D penny worth $303 million is the mule error, one of the rarest and most sought-after mistakes in numismatics, where dies from different denominations are accidentally paired, striking a coin that should not exist because dies are designed, stored, and cataloged specifically for each denomination, and the occurrence of a mule represents a total failure of minting protocol, creating an object that defies all expectations. And if such a mule existed for a 1992 D penny, it would instantly become legendary, commanding attention from collectors, auction houses, and museums worldwide, because the rarity and historical significance of a mule coin are unmatched, and the story behind its accidental creation adds to its value, transforming a simple penny into an object of extraordinary desire. The condition of the coin is equally critical in determining its potential astronomical value, because while an error coin is rare and valuable, circulation typically degrades its surfaces, causing scratches, loss of luster, dents, and chemical oxidation, reducing its appeal. But imagine a 1992 D penny with all the previously mentioned errors: double die obverse, wrong planchet, extreme off-center strike, die cracks, and possibly even a mule reverse, remaining uncirculated, preserved in pristine condition with brilliant surfaces, sharp edges, and no blemishes, stored 4 decades in a mint bag, envelope, desk drawer, or collection vault, untouched by human hands or environmental degradation, and then being submitted to a professional grading service, examined under magnification, analyzed for weight, die characteristics, and surface integrity, and returned with a top mint state grade such as MS67, MS68, or MS69, combining extraordinary errors with flawless preservation. A combination so rare that it could generate bidding wars and intense competition among collectors globally, because in numismatics, perfection amplifies rarity and rarity drives value, and this hypothetical 1992 D penny represents the apex of that principle, a single coin embodying multiple anomalies, historical significance, and impeccable condition. When all these factors converge, dramatic doubling, wrong planchet composition, extreme off-center striking, significant die cracks, potential mule pairing, and flawless mint state condition, the 1992 D penny transforms from an ordinary piece of pocket change into a near-mythical object, a tangible record of industrial imperfection, human oversight, and chance, preserved perfectly by fate, and collectors would pay astronomical sums for the opportunity to own it, because the coin is more than copper. It is a story, a moment in minting history, and a symbol of the extraordinary possibilities hidden within the mundane, and this is why the legend of the 1992 D 1-cent coin continues to capture imaginations, inspire searches through old coin rolls, forgotten collections, and inherited change jars, as enthusiasts hope to discover the one coin that could rewrite the history of modern United States coinage, demonstrating that even the most common objects can hold untold value. And if you want more incredible stories of rare coins, minting anomalies, and once-in-a-lifetime collectibles, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Next, 1976 1-cent USA coin. Today, as we explore one of the most astonishing and mind-boggling stories in the world of coin collecting, the incredible story of the 1976 1-cent coin. A coin that in its ordinary form is simply a small copper-plated zinc disc with a face value of 1 cent. Yet due to an extraordinary combination of minting errors, mechanical anomalies, and mistakes that slipped past the United States Mint's quality control, some collectors and experts believe it could be worth an unbelievable $304 million, a figure that seems almost impossible for a coin so common. And as we examine the reasons behind this astronomical valuation, we will delve into the types of errors that can occur during the minting process, the historical context of the mid-1970s at the Denver and Philadelphia mints, and the extraordinary possibilities that make this particular coin one of the most sought-after hypothetical treasures in modern numismatics. Because to fully understand how a 1976 penny could achieve such legendary status, one must first recognize the environment in which it was produced. The United States Mint in 1976 was striking billions of coins annually to meet both domestic circulation needs and the demands of collectors eager for the nation's bicentennial commemorative issues. And while minting machinery had improved compared to previous decades, the processes still relied heavily on human oversight, mechanical precision that could falter, and procedural safeguards that were not infallible, which means that even in a production run of seemingly identical coins, a tiny fraction could emerge with anomalies that render them virtually unique and incredibly desirable to collectors, because in the world of numismatics, rarity drives value, and when rarity is combined with dramatic error and perfect preservation, the result is a coin that defies conventional valuation and becomes a legendary collectible point, one of the most significant errors that could elevate a 1976 penny to such an astronomical value is a major double die obverse, a phenomenon in which the hub strikes the working die more than once with slight misalignment, producing doubling on the letters, numerals, and portrait features, and for the 1976 cent, this could manifest as bold doubling on "I in God We Trust," "Liberty," or the date 1976, as well as subtle doubling on Abraham Lincoln's portrait, and collectors immediately recognize the importance of such doubling because it cannot be artificially reproduced and represents a genuine minting anomaly that survived the mint's quality control. True hub doubling is especially rare in modern coinage, making any surviving example not only extraordinary but potentially priceless, because once the die responsible for the doubling is corrected or retired, only a very limited number of coins struck during that window could exist, creating scarcity that instantly drives collector interest and competitive bidding. And the 1976 cent is particularly intriguing because it was produced in a year when the mint also focused on bicentennial quarter and half-dollar designs, which increased the volume of production while slightly reducing the oversight for regular circulating cents, making it plausible that a small number of dramatically doubled coins could have escaped detection. Another critical factor contributing to the potential $304 million value is the wrong planchet error, in which a coin is struck on a blank that was not intended for that denomination, weight, or composition, and although 1976 pennies were predominantly copper, the mint simultaneously handled multiple metals and alloys for other denominations, including copper-nickel planchets for 5-cent coins and quarters, and occasionally experimental or leftover planchets from prior years. And if a 1976 penny were accidentally struck on an incorrect planchet, such as one with the wrong thickness, weight, or composition, it would create a coin that is physically impossible according to official specifications, immediately attracting the attention of collectors, because wrong planchet errors represent not just visual curiosity but a physical anomaly, a contradiction frozen in metal, which makes such coins highly prized, particularly when combined with other errors such as doubling, off-center strikes, or die cracks, compounding the coin's rarity and desirability. Extreme off-center strikes are another category of error that could elevate a 1976 penny to near-mythical status, where the blank is not properly aligned with the dies, causing the design to appear shifted toward the rim and leaving portions of the coin blank. And while minor off-center strikes are relatively common, dramatic misalignments of 40, 50, or even 60% are extremely rare, and when the date and mint mark remain fully visible, these errors are highly valuable because they clearly demonstrate a minting mistake while preserving the coin's identity. And collectors understand that such coins are almost impossible to reproduce or counterfeit successfully, which further increases their appeal. And if a 1976 penny displayed an off-center strike combined with a major double die obverse, the convergence of anomalies would create a coin that is virtually unparalleled in rarity and desirability. Die cracks or die breaks, sometimes referred to as cuds, add another layer of intrigue and value, occurring when the die fractures under pressure or through extended use, producing raised lines, jagged patterns, or even missing areas on the coin's surface, and these anomalies serve as a record of the life and wear of the minting die itself, creating a physical narrative that cannot be replicated. And if a 1976 penny exhibited prominent die cracks across Lincoln's portrait, through the date or along the rim, it would be considered not merely a coin with defects but a historical artifact documenting the operation of the mint, particularly if it coincided with doubling or off-center striking, layering multiple error types into a single coin that is extraordinarily rare and visually striking. Perhaps the most sensational type of error that could make a 1976 penny worth $304 million is the mule error, one of the rarest and most coveted mistakes in numismatics, in which dies from different denominations are accidentally paired, striking a coin that should not exist because dies are designed, stored, and cataloged specifically for each denomination, and the occurrence of a mule represents a total breakdown of minting protocol, creating an object that defies all expectations. And if such a mule existed for a 1976 penny, it would instantly become legendary, commanding attention from collectors, auction houses, and museums worldwide, because the rarity and historical significance of a mule coin are unmatched, and the story behind its accidental creation adds to its value, transforming a simple penny into an object of extraordinary desire, a coin that numismatists would regard as the pinnacle of minting anomalies and an icon of industrial imperfection frozen in copper. The condition of the coin is equally critical in determining its potential astronomical value, because while an error coin is rare and valuable, circulation typically degrades its surfaces, causing scratches, loss of luster, dents, and chemical oxidation, reducing its appeal. But imagine a 1976 penny with all the previously mentioned errors: double die obverse, wrong planchet, extreme off-center strike, die cracks, and possibly even a mule reverse, remaining uncirculated, preserved in pristine condition with brilliant surfaces, sharp edges, and no blemishes, stored for decades in a mint bag, envelope, desk drawer, or collection vault, untouched by human hands or environmental degradation. and then being submitted to a professional grading service, examined under magnification, analyzed for weight, die characteristics, and surface integrity, and returned with a top mint state grade such as MS67, MS68, or MS69, combining extraordinary errors with flawless preservation, a combination so rare that it could generate bidding wars and intense competition among collectors globally. Because in numismatics, perfection amplifies rarity and rarity drives value, and this hypothetical 1976 penny represents the apex of that principle. A single coin embodying multiple anomalies, historical significance, and impeccable condition. When all these factors converge, dramatic doubling, wrong planchet composition, extreme off-center striking, significant die cracks, potential mule pairing, and flawless mint state condition, the 1976 penny transforms from an ordinary piece of pocket change into a near-mythical object, a tangible record of industrial imperfection, human oversight, and chance, preserved perfectly by fate, and collectors would pay astronomical sums for the opportunity to own it, because the coin is more than copper. It is a story, a moment in minting history, and a symbol of the extraordinary possibilities hidden within the mundane. And this is why the legend of the 1976 1-cent coin continues to capture imaginations, inspire searches through old coin rolls, forgotten collections, and inherited change jars, as enthusiasts hope to discover the one coin that could rewrite the history of modern United States coinage, demonstrating that even the most common objects can hold untold value. And if you want more incredible stories of rare coins, minting anomalies, and once-in-a-lifetime collectibles, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Last 1978 D1-cent USA coin, we delve into one of the most extraordinary and fascinating stories in the world of coin collecting, the story of the 1978 D1-cent coin. A coin that in its ordinary form is simply a small copper-plated zinc disc with a face value of 1 cent. Yet due to a remarkable combination of minting errors, mechanical anomalies, and mistakes that escaped the United States Mint's quality control, some collectors and experts believe it could be worth an astounding $305 million, a value that seems almost impossible for a coin that originally circulated as common change. And as we examine the factors behind this astronomical valuation, we will explore the types of errors that can occur during production, the historical context of the late 1970s at the Denver Mint, and the extraordinary possibilities that make this particular penny one of the most sought-after hypothetical treasures in modern numismatics. Because to truly understand how a 1978 D penny could achieve such legendary status, it is necessary to recognize the environment in which it was produced. The United States Mint in 1978 was striking billions of coins annually to meet domestic circulation needs and collector demand, and although machinery and production processes had improved significantly compared to previous decades, human oversight, mechanical wear, and procedural lapses still allowed for the possibility of rare errors slipping through, which means that even in a production run of seemingly identical coins, an extremely small fraction could emerge with anomalies that make them virtually unique and highly desirable. Because in numismatics, rarity drives value, and when rarity is paired with dramatic minting errors and perfect preservation, the result is a coin that defies conventional valuation and becomes legendary among collectors. One of the most significant errors that could elevate a 1978 D penny to such an extraordinary value is a major double die obverse phenomenon in which the hub strikes the working die more than once with slight misalignment, producing doubling on letters, numerals, and portrait features. And for the 1978 D cent, this could appear as bold doubling on "I in God We Trust," "Liberty," or the date 1978, as well as subtle doubling on Abraham Lincoln's facial features, hairlines, and clothing details, and collectors immediately recognize the importance of such doubling because it cannot be artificially reproduced and represents a genuine minting anomaly that survived the mint's quality control, and true hub doubling is especially rare in modern coinage, making any surviving example not only extraordinary but potentially priceless, because once the die responsible for doubling is corrected or retired, only the limited number of coins struck during that window could exist, creating scarcity that instantly drives collector interest and competitive bidding. And the 1978 D cent is particularly intriguing because it was produced in a year when the Denver Mint was handling high-volume production runs with increased emphasis on efficiency, which could plausibly allow a small number of dramatically doubled coins to escape detection and enter circulation or private collections unnoticed. Another factor contributing to the potential $305 million valuation is the wrong planchet error, in which a coin is struck on a blank that was not intended for that denomination, weight, or composition, and although 1978 pennies were predominantly copper-plated zinc, the mint simultaneously handled multiple metals for other denominations, including copper-nickel planchets for nickels and quarters, and occasionally experimental or leftover blanks from prior years. And if a 1978 penny were accidentally struck on an incorrect planchet, such as one with the wrong thickness, weight, or composition, it would create a coin that is physically impossible according to official specifications, immediately attracting attention from collectors because wrong planchet errors are not merely visual curiosities but tangible contradictions in metal, which makes such coins highly prized, particularly when combined with other anomalies such as doubling, off-center strikes, or die cracks, compounding the coin's rarity and desirability and creating a hypothetical object that is essentially one of a kind. Extreme off-center strikes are another category of error that could elevate a 1978 penny to near-mythical status, occurring when the blank is not properly aligned with the dies, causing the design to appear shifted toward the rim and leaving a portion of the coin blank. And while minor off-center strikes are relatively common, dramatic misalignments of 40, 50, or even 60% are extremely rare, and when the date and mint mark remain fully visible, these errors are particularly valuable because they clearly demonstrate a minting mistake while preserving the coin's identity. And collectors understand that such coins are nearly impossible to reproduce or counterfeit successfully, which further increases their appeal. And if a 1978 penny displayed an off-center strike combined with a major double die obverse, the convergence of anomalies would create a coin that is virtually unparalleled in rarity, historical significance, and collector interest. Die cracks or die breaks, sometimes referred to as cuds, provide another layer of intrigue and value, occurring when the die fractures under pressure or extended use, producing raised lines, jagged patterns, or even missing areas on the coin's surface, and these anomalies serve as a record of the life and wear of the minting die itself, creating a physical narrative that cannot be replicated. And if a 1978 penny exhibited prominent die cracks across Lincoln's portrait, through the date or along the rim, it would be considered not merely a coin with defects but a historical artifact documenting the operation and stresses of the minting process, particularly if it coincided with doubling or off-center striking, layering multiple error types into a single coin that is extraordinarily rare and visually striking, a true numismatic treasure that would excite both collectors and historians. Perhaps the most sensational type of error that could make a 1978 penny worth $305 million is the mule error, one of the rarest and most coveted mistakes in numismatics, in which dies from different denominations are accidentally paired, striking a coin that should not exist, because dies are specifically designed, stored, and cataloged for each denomination, and the occurrence of a mule represents a total failure of minting protocol, creating an object that defies all expectations. And if such a mule existed for a 1978 penny, it would instantly become legendary, commanding attention from collectors, auction houses, and museums worldwide, because the rarity and historical significance of a mule coin are unmatched. And the story behind its accidental creation adds to its value, transforming a simple penny into an object of extraordinary desire, a coin that numismatists would regard as the pinnacle of minting anomalies and an icon of industrial imperfection frozen in copper, a once-in-a-lifetime discovery capable of generating bidding wars and intense media attention. The condition of the coin is equally critical in determining its potential astronomical value, because while an error coin is rare and valuable, circulation typically degrades surfaces, causing scratches, loss of luster, dents, and chemical oxidation, reducing desirability. But imagine a 1978 penny with all previously mentioned errors: double die obverse, wrong planchet, extreme off-center strike, die cracks, and potentially even a mule reverse, remaining uncirculated, preserved in pristine condition with brilliant red surfaces, sharp edges, and no blemishes, stored for decades in a mint bag, envelope, desk drawer, or collection vault, untouched by human hands or environmental degradation, and then submitted to a professional grading service, examined under magnification, analyzed for weight, die characteristics, and surface integrity, and returned with a top mint state grade such as MS67, MS68, or MS69, combining extraordinary errors with flawless preservation, a combination so rare that it could generate global competition among collectors. Because in numismatics, perfection amplifies rarity, and rarity drives value. And this hypothetical 1978 penny represents the apex of that principle, a single coin embodying multiple anomalies, historical significance, and impeccable condition. When all these factors converge, dramatic doubling, wrong planchet composition, extreme off-center striking, significant die cracks, potential mule pairing, and flawless mint state condition, the 1978 D penny transforms from an ordinary piece of pocket change into a near-mythical object, a tangible record of industrial imperfection, human oversight and chance, preserved perfectly by fate, and collectors would pay astronomical sums for the opportunity to own it, because the coin is more than copper. It is a story, a moment in minting history.